Narcissism is not just a behavior but a psychological structure that entirely depends on the reactions of others. Their ego is hollow and fragile from within. To fill this emptiness, they constantly draw energy from the outside, whether it's praise, attention, or even conflict. Psychologists call this energy narcissistic supply. As long as you respond to them, they feel strong. But the moment you stop responding, the whole system begins to collapse. This isn't just the end of a relationship, it's an earthquake for their psychological identity. Psychology tells us that the greatest weakness of a narcissist is not hatred, but indifference. Because hatred is still a connection, but indifference means the connection is completely gone. This is the moment that becomes the most dangerous for them, because now they are forced to face their inner weakness, and that weakness is emptiness. That's why, when a narcissist realizes that you truly don't care anymore, that's the moment their behavior begins to change. First, they try to downplay the reality, as if nothing has happened. Then gradually, they start looking for ways to pull you back into their grip. When these attempts fail, their behavior becomes harsh and out of control. They twist words, create new dramas, and present a new face in front of others. But deep inside, they have already fallen into a deep void that they cannot fill no matter what they do. All these states appear in a particular sequence. Let's now look closely at this psychological journey and see the stages a narcissist goes through when they realize you truly don't care anymore. But here's one thing to remember. Why is it important for you to know all these stages? Because if you are in such a relationship or have ever been, understanding this will help you in your healing. If you miss even one stage, you might leave your healing journey incomplete. That's why make sure you watch this video till the end. And yes, if you've come this far, it means you're already on the path of healing. Thank you for taking this time for yourself. If this video touches your heart, don't forget to like it, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so the upcoming parts reach you as well. So let's move forward and see the 6 stages a narcissist goes through when they realize you really don't care anymore. When a narcissist realizes that you no longer care, their first reaction is not to accept the truth, but to run away from it. Deep down, they know something has changed, but their mental structure forces them to immediately reject this reality. Psychologists explain that the greatest devastation for a narcissist is not when someone leaves them, but when that person stops giving them attention. Attention is life for them. When it disappears, they feel as though their very existence is dissolving, but they cannot accept this painful truth all at once. That's why they begin convincing themselves that it's only temporary. Maybe you're upset, or you've taken a little distance, but you will come back. This reaction is part of their defense system. In psychology, it's called the denial mechanism, refusing to accept reality until it becomes bearable. That's why narcissists refuse to acknowledge that you are truly free. In their mind, these thoughts keep circling. They still can't live without me. This silence is just a game. They'll come back, just like always. This denial gives them temporary comfort, but it's nothing more than a veil over the truth. They create excuses to disprove your silence. Sometimes they convince themselves you're just showing anger. Sometimes they tell others that you only need some space, and at times they interpret your silence as a kind of test, as if you're measuring their loyalty. Denial doesn't just stay at the mental level, it also shows in their behavior. They might suddenly try to reach out. A casual message, an innocent question, or a vague hint on social media. These are really just probes to see if you're still there for them. Every small reaction from you becomes, in their mind, proof that the relationship is not over. But when their repeated attempts sink into silence, they begin to tremble inside. A void starts to form in their mind. What if they never return? What if this silence is real? These questions begin shaking their psychological foundation, because their ego simply cannot accept that someone could ignore them. Denial cannot sustain them for long. It's only a temporary shield that eventually begins to crack. As soon as they sense that you've truly changed, uneasiness starts to grow within them, and they prepare their next moves. But the reality is, the more they try to run from the truth, the more it chases them. Reasserting control. When a narcissist begins to fear that they are losing their influence, their very first instinct is to try to regain control over the situation. For them, this is not just about saving a relationship. It is a game of preserving their power. In their view, power means having complete control over the emotional world of the other person. This is when they bring out their old tricks. Sometimes they speak in a sweet tone. Sometimes they use apologetic words. And at other times they lean on old memories. They will remind you of the pleasant moments you once shared. They will repeat promises that were never fulfilled. Behind all these attempts lies a single motive: to reassure themselves that you are still within their orbit. If these tactics start failing, they change their role. Suddenly they portray themselves as the victim. Phrases like, "What will you do without me?" or "You were the only one who understood me. Who will understand me now?" become their weapons. These words may sound emotional on the surface, but in reality, they are attempts to trigger your guilt. Because narcissists know very well that sympathy from others is their greatest lifeline. But if the gentle tone and the victim act also fail to work, then they shift gears once more. Their words begin to carry sharpness and sarcasm. They accuse you of being cold-hearted, unfaithful, or selfish. Such accusations are not meant to reflect reality. They are designed to provoke you into responding again. For them, the real goal is not to win your love back, but simply to pull you once more into their game. Here an interesting psychological fact emerges. The narcissist does not care about the type of reaction, whether it's love or anger, explanations or complaints. They interpret all of it as proof of their power. The only true defeat for them is silence, when you refuse to give them any emotional energy at all. That is why at this stage, they appear increasingly restless. Deep down, they know their old methods are no longer working, but they remain compelled to try them over and over again. This is a struggle that cannot last long, because the harder they try, the more they realize that their grip is weakening. At this point, their anxiety and unease begin to intensify. They try to convince themselves that hope still remains, but the truth is that the balance of power has already slipped out of their hand. And when it finally becomes clear to them that every tactic is failing, a new storm begins to brew inside, a storm that leads to the next, far more dangerous expression of their emotion. The fire of revenge. When a narcissist begins to realize that their efforts are failing, a volcano starts to boil within them, desperate to erupt. This isn't ordinary anger. It is an intense reaction, a raging fire that feels beyond their control. Watching them in this state, it seems as if their entire personality is trembling. This anger is actually the result of their loss of power. A narcissist ties their very identity to the influence they hold over others. When that influence begins to break, they feel as though the ground beneath them is slipping away. Instead of enduring this emptiness, they react immediately, and their reaction is often excessively harsh. Sometimes this intensity is visible in open words and behaviors. Bitter remarks, accusations, unexpected threats. All of these are deployed with one purpose: to force you into responding again. They want to prove that they can still shake your emotions, whether those emotions are positive or negative. But often this fire is not displayed openly. Instead, they cunningly involve the people around them. They present themselves as the victim before others, spread rumors, or twist the story in a way that makes you look guilty. All of this is part of the same fire of revenge. At this stage, their goal is no longer to save the relationship, but to polish their crumbling image and prove superiority in front of others. This behavior may appear to target others, but in truth, it reflects their inner helplessness. They start to see in themselves the emptiness they cannot accept. And when they cannot escape from themselves, they pour all their energy outward, onto others. In this way, they temporarily convince themselves that they still have control. According to psychologists, this state is actually a defense mechanism. When the internal pressure becomes unbearable, it is projected outward. For a narcissist, anger becomes a kind of shield, protecting them from facing their own weakness. But the problem is, this shield never lasts long. The more they target others, the more their inner turmoil intensifies. It begins to look as though the louder they shout, the more silent and broken they are becoming inside. The anxiety flickering in their eyes, the disorder in their behavior, and the bitterness of their words, all are signs of the fire that is consuming them from within. But this burning state does not last forever. With time, the intensity begins to fade, and when they see that despite all the noise, nothing has changed, they are left with only one option: to present reality in a new light. This is the point where they begin weaving a new story for themselves, one designed to conceal their inner defeat. Rewriting the narrative. When a person cannot bear their defeat, they often create a new version of reality instead of accepting it. The same happens with a narcissist. When they feel that control has slipped from their hands, when they see that their efforts are failing, they begin to twist and reshape reality to suit their own narrative. This process is not only meant to influence others, it is, above all, a way to deceive themselves. Their minds simply cannot accept that they have lost their influence. So they build a story in which they are still the central character, while everyone else is reduced to side roles. In such situations, they often start to distort your image in front of others. They exaggerate small incidents, throw accusations, or retell past events from a new angle, all as part of the same strategy. The goal isn't just to convince others, but to reassure themselves that they are not at fault. In psychology, this behavior is known as distortion, bending reality in a way that makes it less painful for the mind to handle. When narcissists construct these stories, they are really trying to hide their inner wounds born from the realization that they no longer have power over anyone. Often, they cast themselves as the victim. They say things like, "I always meant well, but I was betrayed," or they paint you as the oppressor while portraying themselves as innocent. This role-swapping game allows them to believe they haven't truly lost, but rather that they were wronged. These stories don't remain confined to words. They manifest in actions too. Ambiguous posts on social media, rumors spread among friends, or dramatic statements made in front of others. All of these are part of their attempt to rewrite reality. But here's the interesting part. The more they try to distort the truth, the more restless they become inside. Because no matter how much reality is twisted, the inner emptiness cannot be filled with lies. These attempts may provide temporary relief, but they cannot last for long. It is like someone standing before a mirror, wanting to see only the reflection they desire. The mirror, however, always shows the truth. They keep trying to cover it with different veils, but veils can change, the mirror cannot. Ultimately, this game of rewriting reality also leads them back to the silence they fear the most, because once others stop believing their stories, they become trapped inside the very narratives they created, and that prison, the one built from their own lies, is the most painful of all. The inner silence. When all efforts fail, when shouting, accusations and manipulative games bring no response, a state begins that is the most unbearable for a narcissist. This is the inner silence. This silence is not just quietness, it is a psychological void, a void where no gaze meets them, no voice echoes back, and no emotion responds. In this moment, they begin to feel weightless, invisible, and broken. Their entire personality has always lived in the mirrors of others, whether it was praise or opposition, attention or conflict. All of it served as validation of their existence. But when all of this ends, they touch for the very first time the reality that there is nothing within them, a void they always tried to fill with the reactions of others. But now that source is gone. This state throws them into intense restlessness. Outwardly, they may spread smiles, appear busier than ever, or try to craft a cheerful image on social media. But these are only veils. In truth, inside they are drowning in a silence that keeps tightening its grip on them. Psychologists explain that in this state, the narcissist loses their sense of identity, because their identity was never born from within. They always recognize themselves through the eyes of others. Now, when there is no one left to look at them, a terrifying question rises. Who am I? This question is their greatest fear. In this silence, they try different ways to save themselves. Some drown in excessive busyness, some recklessly spend on new things, and others hastily jump into new relationships to fill the void. But these are only temporary fixes. The silence does not end. It merely gets suppressed, only to return with even greater intensity. This is the stage where the biggest contrast appears between the outer glitter and the inner reality. Others may believe they have recovered or moved on, but the truth is that inside they feel more broken than ever before. This silence is not just loneliness, it is a kind of existential crisis, a realization that despite having everything in the world, they themselves are empty, and this is a burden they have never been used to carrying. When the void fully surrounds them and no path seems visible, they turn toward a new game. A game in which they try to hide this terrifying emptiness by creating new images, new relationships, and new stories in the outside world, but none of this can change reality. The silence remains. It echoes within them and reminds them every moment of how hollow they truly are. Collapse of ego. There comes a moment when all excuses, games, and tricks lose their effect. For a narcissist, this moment arrives when their inner support system begins to crumble. This state is far deeper than ordinary sadness or loneliness. It is in fact a sign of their very foundation breaking apart. According to psychologists, the entire personality of a narcissist rests on an artificial base. That base is the approval, praise, and attention of others. For years they survive by relying on this external support system. But when that foundation begins to collapse, their inner world falls apart. It feels as if they are standing in an empty room where there is neither a voice nor a reflection. This moment becomes unbearable for them. They try to appear calm, immerse themselves in daily routines, or rush into chasing new achievements. But time and again, the same realization surrounds them. There is no inner center left. Their very existence begins to feel fragmented. In this state, restlessness and confusion increase. Sleep becomes scarce, thoughts grow uncontrollable, and moods shift within moments. At times they appear overly energetic, and suddenly they plunge into deep despair. All of this signals that their inner walls are collapsing. Sometimes, to escape this emptiness, they adopt extreme behaviors. Some drown themselves in excessive relationships. Others fall into self-destructive habits, while some present an image before others that is the complete opposite of their inner reality. Yet all of these attempts prove temporary. The collapse can be hidden, but it cannot be stopped. This is the stage where, for the first time, they are forced to look within. But because they have spent their entire lives drawing energy from the outside, the experience of looking inward feels terrifying. Inside they find only darkness, a void that was never filled, and to avoid facing this darkness, they keep inventing new excuses. The real truth is that this collapse teaches them a bitter lesson. Without the reactions of others, their personality cannot survive, and when that external support vanishes, they stand exposed before their greatest weakness. That weakness is the complete breakdown of their self-confidence. This state can be prolonged and even dangerous, because at this point, they have no clear direction left. But it is also the moment that proves their entire world was built solely on the eyes of others. And when those eyes turn away, their existence shatters into pieces. By now, you've seen the entire journey a narcissist goes through when you truly stop caring. These stages are not just the story of their downfall, but also a symbol of your own healing. And the most important truth in all of this is that the real power was always with you. Perhaps it just took you a while to realize it. It's essential to understand that your peace, your happiness, and your identity should never be in someone else's grip. Narcissists survive on your reactions, but the moment you choose silence and take back your energy, you are actually reclaiming control over your life. This video wasn't just an explanation, it was a mirror, showing you where you stand and where you can go. If you're still stuck in a relationship where you're constantly fighting to prove your worth, let this be your reminder. You don't have to fight that battle anymore. Don't leave your healing journey halfway. Complete it. Give yourself time, rewrite your story, and above all, value your freedom. If today's discussion touched your heart, then like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience might become the very light someone else has been searching for all these years. This is not just a video, it's a beginning. Recognize your power, and never again place your freedom in someone else's hands.